So I know, Vanessa, in your work, you look at Harry Potter as a sacred text. So help me understand, how do you define a sacred text? And then for youth ministers that are interested in using different sacred texts, and may not necessarily agree with Harry Potter as a sacred text, how do they then find other sacred texts that they can use?
So I think of a sacred text as anything that can teach you how to be better at loving, which is, an Augustinian idea. If it gets you better at loving, it gets you closer to God. And so what we say is that sacred is an act and not a thing. And that if you treat something as if it is sacred, then it becomes sacred, right? If I were to come across a Bible in a language that I didn't recognize, I wouldn't know that it was a divinely inspired text, and I would treat it as a doorstopper, or, right? We don't necessarily know what has that value. And so in order to treat something as sacred, we say that you have to have faith that the text can give you endless gifts, that it has to be generative. And even when you're struggling with it, you still have to have faith that it can give you gifts. And 2 is that you have to want to treat it with rigor. So to come back to it again and again, use sacred practices with it. And then 3 is to do those 2 first things in community, even if your community is just you and one other person, but it should be bringing you closer to somebody else. And so as long as the text can do that, as long as it can be generative and get you better at loving and bring you into community, I really think that, that is what we want out of our sacred texts.
And when sacred texts, I think of, treating Harry Potter as if it were a sacred text, or Black Panther, or Beyonce's Lemonade, anything that someone loves and is returning to again and again and finding more and more meaning, and it's very generative. That puts us in touch with our creation in God's image. Anything that lights up our imagination like that and makes us want to create our own song, our own, text, our own story, our own new way of living in the world. That's a reflection of our creation in God's image, and that is the most sacred part of us.